My name is Vibha Kagzi. I founded this firm, and we help with study abroad decisions for students looking to apply to top schools for undergrad, masters, and MBA. So please feel free to contact me after the event, and we can talk personally. Let me introduce my speakers this afternoon. I have Azeem Zainulbhai, who graduated with an economics degree from the University of Chicago. Azeem comes from a UFC family. Him and 3 of his siblings, all 4 went to University of Chicago. He's founded a firm himself. He runs a firm called Crescat, which invests in sub-Saharan Africa. So if there's any interest in learning about investing in other emerging markets, please feel free to talk to him. He also is the alumni head of his graduating class from the University of Chicago, and he interviews for undergrads applying to University of Chicago here from India. This is Mihir Shah. Mihir holds an MBA with high distinction from the University of Chicago. He graduated from VJTI here in Mumbai with a degree in computer engineering, followed by a master's in computer engineering from Columbia University, and now works at India Capital, investing in public markets here in Mumbai. Thank you both for being part of the ReachIvy Speaker Series. It's a real honor to have you here.
Absolutely, pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Hello. And oh, just to clarify, my little brother is sitting in the first row, and he is now the head of the India.
What was your home environment like? Were your parents constantly focused on academics?
Actually, in my family, that was not really the case. A lot of the pressure for academics came from ourselves because our parents didn't. They wanted us to relax and kind of enjoy ourselves. And what ended up happening is we became competitive a little bit among the brothers about academics, and generally throughout high school and throughout college we would compete with each other versus having a pressure down from above. It was really a pressure created by 4 brothers trying to best each other.
I think in my case, there was some pressure, but only early on in the earlier years in school. After that was fairly self-directed. I think I tried to just pick subjects and courses that I enjoyed doing, and then if you enjoy it, sort of the grades come. Sometimes they don't, but the focus was more on exploring things that I enjoyed rather than just focusing on the grades.
I want to understand your choice of major. So you studied economics, you studied computer engineering. Were these interests you had when you were growing up, or were they cultivated at high school, or did you get to college and then decide?
I actually started off as a computer science major in college, because when I was in high school I used to play around with computers a lot. I used to consider myself a bit of a hacker. And then when I went to college, I took computer science, and because of U Chicago's core curriculum, and they push you to take classes that are outside of what you think you want to do. I took an economics class, and I really liked it. And I liked it because of the same type of logic you apply to a computer science problem set. At U Chicago for economics, you I guess apply that kind of logic and that framework. And I really liked it because you're modeling, you're trying to take real world events and put it into a mathematical model, which is what appealed to me. More so than computer science, where it was, I guess, more task-oriented versus utility curve-oriented.
Can't believe you said utility curve-oriented. So for me, actually, the reason I chose computer science is very similar to what Azeem just described. I mean, I used to, play around with computers growing up, and it seemed like something that interested me. And when the opportunity was available for me to do an undergrad in computer science, I made that choice. And how it works over here, everyone knows, is once you make a choice, you sort of are stuck in it for about 4 years. You don't have the flexibility that you might in a US undergrad degree. And even once I got done with I enjoyed it, but once I got done, it's not like I had a lot of information about what my alternatives might be in terms of exploring a career in finance or maybe something else altogether. Because I saw my peers go and do their masters in computer science, that's what I did as well. And there were very few programs like ReachIvy that go about, educating you about what your choices actually are. And, that's how I ended up doing both my bachelor's and my master's in computer science.
Because in India, we have a tendency to shun the liberal arts, and we say, oh, become an engineer, study business if you have to, but the liberal arts are...
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, even if you're on a certain either major track or career track at UChicago, you're forced to do a core curriculum, and the core curriculum has a lot of different aspects to it. But I guess you have a humanities section, a social sciences section, where you're reading about you're reading about philosophy, you're reading about even the precursor to economic theory. You're reading like Adam Smith, and you're reading Marx, you're reading Plato, you're reading Foucault. And throughout all of it, it's not a problem set environment, right? You're forced to think critically, you're forced to analyze these books, and you're forced to write critical essays. And I think that's a valuable skill that you take away from that. Additionally, it helps you think more about behavior versus black and white, right, wrong kind of things and problem sets. So it prepares you a little bit for the real world where, my economic theory should tell me that if interest rates rise when a certain thing happens, it doesn't, right? Or that this stock should move one way and it doesn't. And it prepares you to think a bit about why that is, how the behavior of people drive that, versus just the pure mathematical reasons behind it.
Okay, so you get the psychology behind the decisions as well. Okay, great. And Mihir, in your case, how did Booth help you at India Capital? What is it that you learned at Booth that you can now translate at work?
So for me, it was actually, what I learned at school was very important for me to be effective at work. Like I said, I had no background in finance. And so, the good thing about the MBA program at Chicago Booth is that it's very practical, it's very experiential. You've got, professors that are teaching you cutting edge stuff, but they're also making it extremely practical. So it's not mainly theory, it's also, theory grounded in practice, and they teach you about how you can actually apply it in real world situations. So I had some classes at school that really mimicked what I do right now at work very, very closely. So for example, we had a venture capital class where every week we were evaluating a company or a deal. And so we were going out there doing our own research, calling people up. So it was very useful for me to go through that experience because that allowed me to hit the ground running at my job. And, especially because I was a career switcher. So from that perspective, it was very helpful.
Okay, let's dig deeper into your lives at UFC. What was a typical day like for you at the undergrad and at the MBA level? Just give us a sense of, if one of us were to go, what would it look like?
It's tough to give a typical day because there really isn't, but it's definitely very different from what most kids have in high school or in college in India. So there, I would say maybe on a daily basis, 2 to 3 classes of over an hour each, maybe an hour and a half. And you can schedule it how you want. I have some friends or brothers, in fact, who schedule their classes very late in the day. And some people like me who scheduled it very early in the day. And what happens is, you generally have time in between those classes. So the class is a lecture-based or a discussion-based class. You generally have problem sets due for the class or even kind of discussion points you need to make within that class. Between classes, you're working with study groups to either do problem sets or discuss books or whatever it is that you need to do, go to a lab. And then I would say that evening portion is really reserved for studying. And so you really have to study. I mean, you're in the library studying a lot. Chicago is not a place you can go without studying. You have to study a lot, and you're going to be in the library a lot, but it's very rewarding. And then after that, or even throughout that during the day, you have time for your extracurricular activities, be it we have something called SASA, which is South Asian Student Association, or the economics club, or there's lots of business-oriented stuff as well as arts-oriented. There's so much. And then at night, you either continue studying or you can go out with your friends and whatever you want. So, yeah.
So the MBA experience was a little different. I thought it was a really good mix of social and academic activities, and I think any MBA program tends to focus a lot on integrating the class, making sure they're having fun together. So it wasn't as much studying as the undergrad program for sure. It sort of had a lot of fun element as well. In terms of like an average week, like Azeem said, I don't think there was an average day or an average week. And the interesting thing is, one person to the next could have a very different week. That's because the school offers a lot of flexibility in terms of choosing your classes and scheduling them within the week. So if you have a background in a certain subject and you want to skip that altogether, you can do that. If you want to take some tougher classes, you can do that. If you want to just take easy classes and party for 2 years, you can do that as well. And there are some people who chose to do that. But even within the week, what happens is, you can choose the timing of your classes. So, some people chose to have 4-day weeks because that allowed them to travel and focus on recruiting opportunities, 4-day weekends. So they basically had classes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So that really differs, from one person to the next. In terms of how you spend your time, you typically spend it as a combination of, you spend some of it attending classes, some of it studying. A bunch of it will be spent in extracurricular activities. Everyone's active in student-led groups. So I was active in the South Asian business group. There are similar cultural and professional groups that people are very active in. And people travel a fair amount. And, they put their weekends to good use. So, it was a good mix of a number of different activities.
Now that you've convinced us that the University of Chicago is the place to be, tell us how to get in. So what do you think worked in your applications? What do you think convinced the AdCom about your specific candidature?
UChicago is going to be a very different application than most of the other schools. So I'm sure, I know that UChicago is now on the common application, but we still have a series of essays that you need to write separately. And they want to make you work hard to get in. They want it to be a little bit more self-selecting. So you have to know that you got to put in more effort. You're putting in more effort for the application. You're also going to be putting in a hell of a lot more effort when you actually attend the school and when you're studying there. So one of the things that I think works really well in a UChicago application is, and I think Mihir will stress on this, is you have to be very genuine about who you are. But everybody is a little bit quirky. And the quirkiness factor definitely works in your favor. Something that is more unique, something that is that other people don't have. What is the most unique thing about you that separates you from everyone else? That's what you should be writing about. That's what you should be bringing out in your essays, because that's what UChicago wants. UChicago wants very unique, interesting people, and I think that that's what helped me in my application, and that's what I see when I read applications. Also, I mean, you have to think about it from an essay reader's perspective. Okay, an essay reader reads a lot of essays. And a lot of the essays are very similar to each other. So what sticks out in his mind or her mind is the unique essay.
So they do have a common application and a supplemental app.
Yeah. There's a supplemental app.
And I'll vouch for the fact that they were by far the quirkiest questions of all schools for this year.
What was this year's?
How would you connect Plato with Play-Doh? I mean,
awesome. Exactly. I mean, that describes it right there. That's crazy.
From our perspective, it makes our job really, really tough.
Yeah. That's why you need people like Vibha, because she can help you navigate between Plato and Play-Doh.
Mihir, at the business school level.
So I think, by the time you're applying for business school, you would have spent, you're done with your undergrad degree, you've spent some time working, you clearly would have, some accomplishments to your name. So when you're applying, it's definitely not a time for you to be shy or, modest. You definitely want to, bring your strengths out. But like Azeem said, what I think helps, and not just at the University of Chicago, but in general for any, business school application, is just for you to be very genuine and, talk about what it is that you want to accomplish while you're there, what it is that you want to accomplish afterwards. And this may sound fuzzy, but I think it all comes down to the question of finding your fit. And if you spend some time exploring that and you find that, I think University of Chicago is a good program for me for XYZ reasons, it'll really show in your essays as well. And for me, the University of Chicago wasn't at the top of my list when I was applying, but the more I found out, the more I realized that, hey, I think, this is a place that I'd be really happy at. I think it's a good fit, and I felt like it showed in my essays. The only other Chicago booth specific advice that I can give is they do have a 4-slide PowerPoint essay, so you can really use that opportunity to talk about yourself. And I definitely use that because through essays there's only so much that you can say, but there are so many other softer aspects about your interest in maybe music or photography that is difficult for you to put down, in a very business-like essay. So use that PowerPoint presentation to really, bring your personality out, and then you just have to cross your fingers and wait.
The PowerPoint question actually does really give you an opportunity to showcase a different talent. When we started out with the applications, people were stumped and they said, oh, what are we going to put in a PowerPoint? And as we started developing them, it really showcased, a completely different aspect of their personalities that a lot of the other business schools didn't get to see.